The sadness will last forever. These final words from Vincent van Gogh echo as a portrait of his turbulent life. Although widely recognized as one of the greatest artistic geniuses, his journey was marked by suffering, rejection, and a devastating internal struggle. The letters exchanged with his brother Theo offer a glimpse into his tormented soul, revealing a sensitive, passionate man consumed by self. Van Gogh is often associated with an intriguing combination of madness and brilliance, but does this perception truly capture his complexity? Stories about him abound, cutting off his ear, selling only one painting during his lifetime, and the belief that his art was inseparable from his instability. Yet few delve into how his own mind became his greatest adversary. Today, we'll dive into the story of how self-sabotage consumed a genius. Most people are familiar with Van Gogh's great works, but few know how his life began and the impact it had on his art. Born in 1853 in the small town of Zundert, Netherlands, Van Gogh was marked by tragedy even before taking his first step. His older brother, also named Vincent van Gogh, died at birth, leaving behind a tombstone bearing the name he would inherit. Growing up visiting the grave of another Vincent shaped his sense of identity and deepened his feelings of inadequacy. From an early age, Van Gogh showed talent for drawing, but his life took different paths before he committed to art. He worked as an art dealer, a job that took him to Paris, London, and other major cultural hubs. Despite being exposed to the art world, he struggled with depression and isolation. Searching for purpose, he attempted to become a missionary, preaching to impoverished communities. However, his intense approach and disregard for social conventions led to failure. It was not until he was 28, after years of personal and professional frustrations, that Van Gogh decided to dedicate himself to painting. His early works, such as The Potato Eaters, were dark, portraying the harsh lives of peasants. During this period, Van Gogh developed a style focused on earthy tones and realistic themes, in stark contrast to the vibrant colors of his later works. The death of his father in 1885 marked a turning point. He moved to Belgium, where his psychological state worsened. In addition to the pain of loss, he began battling health issues and adopted harmful habits, such as heavy smoking, which he symbolized in the painting Skull of a Skeleton with Burning Cigarette. This haunting and introspective work reflects his internal torment and complex view of mortality. Even in his deepest struggles, Van Gogh found in art a way to express his soul, laying the foundation for the genius the world would come to know. Van Gogh's madness was not merely a mental phenomenon, but also a consequence of his internal struggle with loneliness and misunderstanding. The episode that best illustrates his fragile mental state occurred in 1888, when, after an intense argument with painter Paul Gauguin, Van Gogh began hearing disturbing voices in his head. At the height of his anguish, he made a desperate decision to cut off part of his ear in an attempt to silence the voices. This act reflects an extreme state of despair, and the fact that Van Gogh remembered nothing of the event suggests he experienced an acute mental breakdown. After being hospitalized, Van Gogh returned home in January 1889, but his recovery was far from straightforward. His episodes of delusions and hallucinations, particularly about being poisoned, became more frequent. He alternated between the hospital and his home, battling a mind that was gradually consuming him. His growing instability raised concern among his neighbors, who soon nicknamed him the Mad Redhead. Yet no one understood the profound suffering hidden behind this stigma. Despite his torment, Van Gogh managed to express his pain through his art and words. In one of his letters, he wrote, "At times, indescribable anguish, at times moments when the veil of time and the inevitability of circumstances seem to be torn apart for an instant." These words revealed the depth of his agony and his awareness that his mind was being torn apart by circumstances and internal pressures. Following his mental collapse, Van Gogh's worldview underwent a drastic shift. He moved away from painting abstract scenes and began depicting the reality around him in a more raw and visceral manner. He focused on painting everyday scenes and simple objects while also dedicating himself to a series of self-portraits, as if attempting to understand himself through the canvas. These self-portraits, often laden with pain, reflect the internal battle he waged. His madness, paradoxically, became a tool for self-discovery, highlighting the depth of his perception and his relentless struggle with his own demons. The madness and self-sabotage that defined Van Gogh's life serve as a powerful warning for all of us. When we neglect our mental health and ignore signs of emotional exhaustion, we risk falling into a cycle of self-destruction similar to the one Van Gogh endured. Consumed by loneliness and internal pressure, his anguish manifested in self-destructive behaviors. Without proper care, the mind can convince us that change is impossible, often preventing us from seeking help or breaking free from harmful patterns. In daily life, this manifests when we ignore our limits, push ourselves excessively, or isolate ourselves emotionally. Small symptoms, such as constant anxiety, feelings of inadequacy, or a lack of purpose, can escalate, creating a cycle of self-sabotage where we become the ones placing obstacles in our own path. Like Van Gogh, we may get lost in our emotions, losing connection with our true essence. The key lies in recognizing these signs and seeking proper care, whether through therapy, social support, or activities that promote mental well-being. Only by doing so can we prevent our inner turmoil from distancing us from our potential and leading us down a path of unnecessary suffering. Van Gogh's Abyss and his connection to Nietzsche are fascinating, revealing much about how both men confronted reality in its rawest essence. To grasp this depth, we must delve into philosophy, particularly Friedrich Nietzsche's thought. Both Van Gogh and Nietzsche crossed a psychological and philosophical abyss in 1889, the year their minds collapsed. Nietzsche, in his book Beyond Good and Evil, reflects on the nature of suffering and truth, offering his famous phrase, "When you gaze long into an abyss, the abyss gazes also into you." This powerful metaphor warns of the peril of facing unfiltered truth, as it can consume one's peace of mind. This concept of the abyss is central to understanding Van Gogh's mental collapse. In confronting his own emotions and the harsh reality of existence, he, like Nietzsche, perceived the world in a desolate light, where pain seemed an unending reflection of existence itself. Nietzsche championed amor fati, the love of fate and reality as it is. He believed true greatness came from accepting suffering as an inseparable part of life, a concept that Van Gogh seemingly embraced. His paintings, increasingly intense and haunting, mirror this acceptance of chaos, madness, and pain as immutable truths of human existence. Both men, in their own ways, challenged conventional views of reality, embracing suffering as a profound connection to the world. Van Gogh's life ended tragically in a spiral of madness and self-sabotage. Following a series of mental breakdowns, including the infamous episode where he cut off his own ear, the painter lived between the hospital and his home, engulfed in delusions and deep anguish. His grip on reality grew increasingly tenuous, with hallucinations clouding his clarity about his work and his mental state. Van Gogh's self-sabotage manifested not only in impulsive actions, but also in his relentless inner turmoil. He often found himself trapped in a cycle of self-judgment and suffering, where his expectations and anxieties paralyzed him. His extraordinary genius, rather than serving as a purely creative force, became a battleground where his tormented mind undermined his accomplishments. This emotional and psychological collapse highlights how madness, paired with self-sabotage, can destroy even the greatest of geniuses. Van Gogh, whose potential promised an even more remarkable legacy, saw his creations overshadowed by the intensity of his mental anguish. Recognized only posthumously, His story is a poignant reminder that without proper care and support, even the brightest talents can be consumed by their own suffering.